Hey guys, I am Abby Orso, and today I'm going to be talking about ancient methods for home cooling and ideas on how we can incorporate that into our modern spaces. I live in Southern Oregon, which is probably nothing like the Oregon that you're imagining right now. This corner of Oregon is dry, and we have very hot summers. So most of the years here are drought years for us, and there's hardly a year that goes by when we don't have really bad smoke from the forest fires. This climate always has me thinking about the past and how the pioneers dealt with the conditions we have here. And on our summer months, when the weeks go by at over 100 degrees, I always wonder about how our ancestors dealt with the extreme heat. And so I've researched these methods over the past few years during the summertime, and I'm excited to share 3 really cool passive air cooling methods with you that I have found. Okay, so these methods are smart, and we can learn from them. In many parts of the world, they developed incredibly brilliant and effective ways to cool buildings using design, materials, physics, and their brains. What's interesting is that these techniques aren't about fighting the environment, they work with it. Spoiler alert. It's all about using airflow, thermal mass, evaporation, and shade in very deliberate ways. When I started my investigation, the research didn't lead me to the pioneers of Oregon, but back further to an ancient time thousands of years ago, in a climate much less forgiving than the one I'm in. It led me to Persia. The first method I want to talk about are the Iranian wind towers called Badgirs. They are these tall tower structures that you see rising above the roof lines. These are common in Iran and the surrounding areas of the Middle East, and they work best in hot, dry climates. Wind towers are designed to catch the wind and move it through the interior space. Wind towers are highly effective. They can lower indoor temperatures by up to 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is how it works. Wind enters at the top of the tower and it's funneled downward into the building. The cooler wind winds around the building and the hot air inside is pushed up and out. So remember, we got to remember, cool air sinks and hot air rises. It's a simple concept that keeps the air flowing in a building, constantly bringing in the coolest air and forcing the hottest air up and out. Sophisticated designs utilize 2 towers, so one side for catching the wind and the other side for the hot air to escape, ensuring a constant breeze. Here is where it gets awesome. When an exposed water source is inside the building, if there is an exposed water pool or a little running water directly below the tower, the wind comes into the building, drops down, and runs across the top of the water. That causes evaporative cooling, which feels like cool, humid air inside, and it is distributed around the building while pushing the hot air out. People say the effect of the Badgir is similar to a swamp cooler, except the Badgir seems superior to me because it is passive, meaning no power is needed. So here's a few more interesting things I found before I move on. The wind towers and buildings in this area of the world rely on very thick mud brick walls, like think at least 3 feet thick. Walls like this have a high thermal inertia, which means the walls strongly resist temperature changes. So they absorb heat slowly during the day and then release it gradually at night, which helps stabilize the internal temperatures as well. Also, you'll notice the sticks pointing out from these towers. These are wood poles that are purposefully left exposed up on the tower. They serve 3 purposes. The poles run through the tower walls, forming support, kind of think like rebarb through cement. The poles also serve as permanent scaffolding supports. So if you ever need to make repairs, they can easily be made to the outer walls of the tower. And lastly, I found that they hope that birds roost on the poles so that they can collect the bird poop below to use as fertilizer. So smart, and gross, but smart. My Badgir research led me down this rabbit hole, which led me to Iranian ice domes called Yakhchal. Yakhchals were essentially ancient refrigeration systems, humongous ice storage structures built in the desert. They look like giant onion shapes from the outside and are used to make ice during the winter and to store it year-round. Every ice dome has a man-made, shallow, shaded pool next to it. During the winter, the people would divert a little bit of water into the pond in the evening. The shallow water would freeze over the cold, dry desert night, and then thin little ice sheets would be harvested every morning and stored deep down in the underground space of the Yakhchal. They would do this freezing and harvesting night after night and slowly build up a substantial amount of ice over the winter. The Yakhchal itself has a brilliant design. You can see that the building is very large from the outside. On the inside, you would see that the ground is dug down like there's a large open basement. The ice sheets are stored in the pit of the Yakhchal, forming a big, thick ice block. The fact that it is below ground helps keep it cool. Then they would put an insulation of thatch or something like that to cover the top of the ice. Then we get to the point of the giant dome. The walls of the dome are super thick, like 6 feet, which makes them have that high thermal inertia like we learned about with the Badgirs. Around the bottom of the dome are vents, and then there are vents at the very tip top of the dome too. So this has that cool air in, hot air escapes effect that we talked about with the Badgirs. A lot of the pictures of Yakhchals, they're just shown on their own, but I have also seen a few that have 2 Badgirs connected to the dome. Talk about an ancient, what's cooler than being cool? A Yakhchal and 2 Badgirs! The point of the Yakhchal was to provide temporary stability to people living in the desert. It was a place where they could store food that they needed to keep cool. Some years they could get the ice to last through the entire year, but that wasn't guaranteed. It was a place that they could keep cool all year long. And every winter, they would start again, slowly making and harvesting ice. Lastly, I want to talk about the wonders of terracotta. I could actually do a whole video just about this, but I think it's cool to group these 3 concepts together because there's so much overlap in the concepts and because this is where my passive cooling journey led me. Terracotta is a material used for thousands of years, and there is evidence that ancient Egypt was using terracotta for evaporative cooling as far back as 2500 BC. There's truly so many amazing uses for terracotta that I won't get into them all, but let me know in the comments if you do want me to nerd out, and I will make a video about terracotta someday. Today, I'm going to talk about terracotta cooling walls, which take these physics principles and these basic materials and puts them to use today. The idea of terracotta walls seems like a present-day solution using lessons learned from the past. Terracotta walls use the principle of wind, heat, water, and evaporative cooling. A terracotta screen is placed in the path of the wind, and the terracotta is soaked in water. Terracotta is very porous, so it absorbs a lot of water. The hot air blows past the wet terracotta and causes evaporation. The evaporation causes the terracotta to cool, so the wind blows cool air out. Some tests discovered a drop of up to 57 degrees Fahrenheit with this method. This is a modern take on ancient cooling. So this is not a passive cooling system. The way the terracotta is soaked with water is by using a little pump and a drip line to pump the water through the tube to the top of the terracotta, and then the little drips let the water out. So it drops down, keeping the terracotta constantly moist. I'm sure you could do this manually or with a hand pump, but a little pump would be a low cost and much less energy used than an air conditioner. I've seen two designs when I researched the terracotta wall cooling. One is the beehive style, and it used these terracotta cone tubes all linked together. The cone tubes are supposed to increase the wind flow through the screen. This is a style that the Indian architect Monish Sapurayu has designed. The other style seems more simple. It's a screen with terracotta brick tiles stacked up and slanted to catch the wind. Both the cone tube and the tile styles are supported by a metal wall frame or some other structure that can support the weight of the water-soaked terracotta. I think these methods are fascinating, and they leave me with many questions about how we can incorporate these concepts into our modern world. One of my big dreams is to design a resort and use all these ancient design methods in my building, but that's not in my budget right now. So I wonder, how can I make use of these ideas now on my limited budget of $0? There are some buildings today that make use of clerestory windows. Those are the windows up high in a building, like where the second floor would be, but they are open to the floor below. I've seen these primarily in churches or libraries or government buildings. I'd love to see if those windows are functional and to open them up in the hot summer months and see if these cooling methods would still apply with our thinner walls and modern building materials. It would be cool to get a little indoor fountain going and see how cool you could get your space without using AC. I also admire the determination and ingenuity of the ice domes. The method that seems the most accessible to me currently, though, is experimenting with a terracotta wind wall. I'm not in a place with a good supply of terracotta, which has kept me from attempting this wall so far. I also wonder about the support for the wall, and I don't want to build something so janky that it comes crashing down on me one day in the wind. So if you have any ideas or suggestions for me, please let me know. Of course, my biggest question with all of these methods is, what about all the bugs? If I were making a Badgir today, I'd install some screens. Same with a Yakhchal, but I just imagine that yellow jackets would have a field day with a terracotta wind wall. I know I covered a lot today, so I made a Pinterest page where I link to a ton of pictures and articles, videos about these subjects. There are so many cool videos and tangents you can go on, so check that out as a resource. I'll link it in the video description below. I'm Abby Orso. I make fun decor for fun people, and you can visit my website at abbyorso.com. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube. It's free for you, and it really helps me out. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comment section. I love design, and I love to get inspiration from all sorts of wacky places. And if you're a benefactor looking for someone with big ideas to design a resort for you, give me a call.